Have you ever heard of a man named Bismarck? He was the quiet one in his family. You know, the person who never causes trouble, never asks for much, and is always the first to show up when someone else needs a hand. He was dependable, selfless, and strong. But life, as it often does, decided to test that strength. One year, a sickness began to creep into Bismarck's life. It started slowly, almost unnoticeably, but then it turned aggressive. The hospital visits became more frequent, and the medical bills started piling up, creating a mountain of debt that his small savings just couldn't conquer. For the first time in his life, Bismarck had to do something he had never done before. He asked his family for help. He reached out, his voice filled with a vulnerability he rarely showed. He explained his situation, the mounting pressure, the fear. The responses he got were a cold, hard lesson in human nature. One sibling replied, "I'll see what I can do," and then went silent, the promise evaporating into thin air. Another said, "You know, things are tough for me too right now," using their own struggles as a shield. Some didn't even bother to respond at all, leaving his messages unanswered, his calls unreturned. And the ones who always seemed to brag about their success, their new cars, their big houses, they were suddenly too busy to lend a hand. Days bled into weeks, and Bismarck kept fighting his battle, but he was fighting it alone. He held on to a sliver of hope, believing that someone, anyone, would eventually step in. He just needed a little support, a little help to get through the storm, but nobody came. His calls for help echoed in a chamber of silence. Then, one cold morning, the fight was over. Bismarck couldn't hold on any longer. His body gave up long before his spirit did. And that's when the phone calls started. Not when he was scared and alone in a hospital bed. Not when he was weak and struggling to pay his bills. Not when he desperately needed someone to talk to. No, the calls came when he was already gone. Suddenly, the same family that had ignored his messages was buzzing with endless energy. It was a bizarre, almost theatrical transformation. They formed committees. They organized late-night meetings. They had passionate arguments over the color of the flowers and the type of coffin. In just 24 hours, they raised more money for his funeral than Bismarck had ever asked for to stay alive. It was a cruel irony. People who had only sent him a single dollar for his treatment were now sending large donations. To support the family, relatives who hadn't visited him in years showed up to the funeral wearing matching custom-made clothes. A uniform of feigned grief. Some cried loudly, their wails seemingly performed for an audience. Others gave long, eloquent speeches about how much Bismarck meant to them and what a great man he was. But Bismarck wasn't there to see any of it. He didn't get to hear the praise. He didn't get to feel the supposed love, and he certainly didn't benefit from the money that was so freely given after he was gone. All he needed was a little help when he was still breathing, not a grand, expensive show when he was not. At the burial, as the crowd gathered, an old neighbor leaned over and whispered a line that was more profound than any eulogy spoken that day. She said, "People love the dead because the dead can't ask for anything." And that was the heartbreaking truth of Bismarck's story. A life that could have been saved, a man who could have been helped, if only the world celebrated the living with the same passion and generosity they use to honor the dead. This story is a powerful reminder for all of us. Don't wait until it's too late to show up for the people you care about. Don't let your love be a performance at a funeral. Let it be a lifeline for someone who is still here, still fighting, still hoping. Pick up the phone, send that message. Offer that help, no matter how small. Let's start honoring the living today. Thank you for listening.